Hi, thanks for joining. I'm Mark Aiello, General Manager for Lionbridge's Life Sciences Business Practice. With me today is my colleague, Pia Windelov, who's our Director of Regulated Solutions. Before joining Lionbridge, Pia held a variety of roles in pharma and medical device organizations, such as Leo Pharma, Agilent Technologies, and Novo Nordisk. Today, we're going to be discussing the upcoming application date for EU MDR and the language challenges that it presents to medical device organizations across the industry. Today, we're going to be taking questions that have been submitted in advance through LinkedIn, and I'll be asking Pia to comment as we go. Pia, if you don't mind, let's get started.
Yes.
First question is, we've been tracking MDR and IVDR for quite some time. So why are we talking about these topics now?
Well, Mark, the medical device reforms in Europe have actually been underway for some time now. And in fact, the medical device regulation, the MDR, as well as the IVDR, the in vitro diagnostic regulation, were both published officially back in 2017. We're talking about it now because the date of application of the MDR is just around the corner. So 26th of May, next month, we're going to see that MDR take full effect. So that's why we're talking about it today. Yes.
Great. Thank you very much. So what are the major changes that we can anticipate on the application date?
Well, the new EU reforms for medical devices in Europe have been underway for some time now. In fact, the medical device regulation, the MDR, as well as the in vitro diagnostic regulation, the IVDR, were both published back in 2017. But the reason we're talking about this today is that the date of application of the MDR is just around the corner. So that's taking place on 26th of May, so next month. So that's the reason why we're talking about this here.
Thanks. And what are the major changes that we can anticipate on the application date?
Okay, there's a number of challenges that are impacting our clients, and obviously also the services that we can provide to clients in getting into compliance with the MDR as well as the IVDR. For example, one of the things that we see is that the clinical performance requirements for medical devices in Europe are going to become more strict. So, for example, for high-risk devices such as Class 3 devices and implantable devices, medical device studies are going to become a requirement, with some exceptions, of course. But we do expect to see that our clients are going to come to translations related to clinical device investigations. And because we have such experience from human drug trials, we can actually help our clients doing this. Another aspect I want to emphasize here is that there's going to be stricter requirements on post-market reporting, post-market surveillance of devices. So that is going to, for example, mean that device clients who provide medium risk or high risk devices will need to do periodic safety update reports, for example. They will need to do post-market clinical follow-up reporting. Another content type I can mention, which is new, is the summary of safety and clinical performance. New thing that has to be done for high-risk devices. So that's heavily impacting our clients. They need to generate much more content under these new regulations. Last thing I could mention here is there's more stricter requirements for transparency of the performance of safety of devices on the EU market going forward with these regulations. So some of these content pieces that I've been talking about need to be publicly disclosed on the European Medical Device Database, the EUDAMED, and that I expect will trigger more translation needs for our clients for this content that needs to be publicly disclosed.
Understood. Thank you. Pia, in your role, you're in regular communication with medical device manufacturers. What's your sense at this point of the general state of readiness that's out there?
That's a good question. And I think, Lionbridge is lucky to work with many different medtech clients. So we work with small, medium-size, and large-size medtech companies. And I think the general impression is that there's great diversity in how ready they are really for the MDR. And I think that's partly because of their product portfolio. So it depends, do you have new devices in development that are high risk, for example? You need to be sure that you have revised your quality management system to comply with the new requirements? Do you have devices already on the market, and the certificates of these devices will be valid for a period of time going forward? So it really depends on the portfolio of our clients. I guess maybe also the size of our clients. I think some clients, some small, medium-sized clients may be more of a wait and see, do more of a wait and see approach. So I guess the answer here is that there's a great diversity in the readiness of clients, and whether they're in transition phase still or whether they have fully implemented the new requirements, we are able to help them with the language support that we can provide.
So what is MDR's impact on language?
So there's certainly a major impact on language and translation needs for our clients, and I think there are more reasons for this. There's this simple boost that I'm talking about. There's a boost in content that our clients need to generate, especially if they do medium to high risk devices. They need to generate much more content throughout the life cycle of the devices. There's also the fact that there is more reporting going on, and that these reports need to be maintained while the product is on the market. That's not only going to trigger translations, it's also going to trigger repeat translations. And let's say, there's an interdependence between these types of content, right? So if you change your product, you need to do changes perhaps to the informed consent form. That is potentially triggering changes in related reports or reports that share content, summaries of safety and clinical performance, periodic safety updates, reports, etc. So in general, we expect to see more translation needs throughout the life cycle of the devices. So certainly there's an impact on our clients.
Great, thank you. What recommendations do we have for how manufacturers can solve these language and translation challenges?
Yeah, that's a great question. And Mark, I think in the old days, translation was kind of a last minute exercise. You had this device, you need to do some labeling, you need to do some translations for the labels and the technical manuals, etc., to support, the launching of the device on the market. That approach doesn't really fly anymore, So I think a clear recommendation from me would be for clients to think about translation as something that needs to be planned along with the technical requirements, compliance requirements. You need to plan your translations up front. You need also to think about, should we centralize, translations throughout the device, and leveraging the opportunity for automation in the translation process, language assets, using glossaries, for example, even from the point of pre-market and until the device is no longer on the market. It pays off to do these glossaries, and Lionbridge can keep those glossaries for our clients. Some of these are very product specific, so it really makes sense to do that. So my advice would be centralize translations and plan them upfront.
Great, thank you. Last question for today, Pia. Will we see new language challenges brought about by MDR?
Yeah, good question again, and really we'll have to see what challenges are going to emerge. But I think, one aspect that that my team is looking into currently is this whole change about transparency of devices, which is actually something we see for clinical studies with the new clinical trial regulation in Europe. Increased transparency on the performance and safety of devices is going to drive more conscious communication to lay audiences, right? You need to think about who's your audience. If you have to publicly disclose results, for example, on a publicly accessible database. And I think that's going to present some new challenges going forward in conforming with health literacy principles. Maybe readability testing will become something that we can support our clients with going forward. So let's see what happens. I certainly think this is going to come up.
Great, thank you, Pia. Pia, some of our clients have come to us for very specific guidance on how they will go live with the language aspects of compliance. Can you talk through how we approach conversations like that with our clients?
Yeah, so one example we've had is actually that our clients came to us with this specific question: what are the language requirements on the MDR? And what we did was actually that we went through the full medical device regulation article by article and tried to extract what would be relevant language requirements under the MDR. And that was not really enough, because we need to look into the different layers of language requirements. So there's kind of an overall layer coming from the MDR. There's a member state layer coming from member states, because the member states are still defining and determining the language requirements even under the MDR. So there's a layer there per each member state. And then there's, the bottom layer that impacts language requirements is what type of device does our client have. So if it's a high-risk device, we try to extract, okay, these are the language requirements for your high-risk devices. This is the type of content that you need to translate. These are the languages you need to translate into, et cetera, et cetera. So yes, there's definitely an advisory role that we've had to some of our clients in this regard.
And that guidance is something that your team could provide to other organizations that are seeking it.
Of course, and I think one thing we need to say is that this is we're still waiting for some guidance from the Medical Device Coordination Group, which is the group that is developing guidelines for the industry. We still are lacking some of these guidances to have a complete recommendation to clients, but we've gotten quite far with this already. So, and it's maybe not only for manufacturers of medical devices. We do know that there's also an impact of the MDR on economic operators. So, for example, importers or distributors actually also have obligations under the MDR to check compliance of the manufacturer. For example, for labeling, has the label been translated? Is all the information that goes with the device for the market, is that really present here? So we have that cooperation too with economic operators.
Great, thank you. That's all we have time for today. So while we end the conversation today here, that does not end the information share from Lionbridge Life Sciences related to MDR. Everybody who's attended today's session will receive a link with additional information. And if you do have further questions, please visit us on our website, www.lionbridge.com, and one of our experts will respond. Thanks very much to Windelov for joining. Thank you. Thanks to you. Goodbye.